Tascha tesu avigya swarat tene brahma hidaya adikavaye muyanti yatsurayaha tejo varimudam yata vinimayo yatra trisargo misha damna swena sada nirasta kuhakam satyam param dhimahi. O my Lord Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva, O all-pervading personality of Godhead, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth and the primeval cause of all causes, of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universes. He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations. And he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him. It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji, the original living being. By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion, as one is bewildered by the illusory representations of water seen on fire or land seen on water. Only because of him do the material universes, temporarily manifested by the reactions of the three modes, appear factual, although they are unreal. I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna, who is eternally existent in the transcendental abode, which is forever free from the illusory representations of the material world. I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth. Dharma Prajita Kaitravocha Paramo Nirmatsanam Satam Vedyam Vastavam Atra Vastu Shivadam Tapatrayon Mulanam Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite Kim Vaparer Ishvaraha Sadyohridi Avarudyate Tra Krite Bihi Sususabhistakshanat. Completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated, this Bhagavata Purana propounds the highest truth, which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart. The highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all. Such truth uproots the threefold miseries. This beautiful Bhagavatam, compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in its maturity, is sufficient in itself for God realization. What is the need of any other scripture? As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam, by this culture of knowledge, the Supreme Lord is established within his heart. Nigama kalpatarur galitam phalam sukumakad amrita dravya samyutam pibata bhagavatam rasam alayam ahur ahorasika bhuvi bhavukaha. O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam, the mature fruit of the desire tree of Vedic literatures. It emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadeva Goswami. Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful, although its nectarian juice is already relishable for all, including liberated souls. Shinvatam Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Hirdyantak sto abhadrani vidunati srihitsatam. To hear about Krishna from Vedic literatures, or to hear from him directly through the Bhagavad Gita, is itself righteous activity. And for one who hears about Krishna, Lord Krishna, who is dwelling in everyone's heart, acts as a best-wishing friend and purifies the devotee who constantly hears about him. In this way, a devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental knowledge. As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam and from the devotees, he becomes fixed in the devotional service of the Lord. Srimad Bhagavatam, Grantaraj Ki Jai, Canto 1, Chapter 13, verse number 27. Yaswakat parato veha jata nirveda atmavan hridikritva harim gehat pravarjet sa narottama. Translation, purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. He is certainly a first-class man who awakens and understands either by himself or from others the falsity and misery of this material world, and thus leaves home and depends fully on the personality of Godhead residing within his heart. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. There are three classes of transcendentalists, namely the Dhira, or the one who is not disturbed by being away from family association. 2. One in a renounced order of life, a sannyasi by frustrated sentiment. And 3. A sincere devotee of the Lord who awakens God consciousness by hearing and chanting, and leaves home depending completely on the personality of Godhead who resides in his heart. The idea is that the renounced order of life, after a frustrated life of sentiment in the material world, may be the stepping stone on the path of self-realization. But real perfection of the path of liberation is attained when one is practiced to depend fully on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who lives in everyone's heart as Paramatma. One may live in the darkest jungle alone out of home, but a steadfast devotee knows very well that he is not alone. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is with him, and he can protect his sincere devotee in any awkward circumstance. One should therefore practice devotional service at home, hearing and chanting the holy name, quality, form, pastimes, entourage, etc., in association with pure devotees. And this practice will help one awaken God consciousness in proportion to one's sincerity of purpose. One who desires material benefit by such devotional service, devotional activities can never depend on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, although he sits in everyone's heart. Nor does the Lord give any direction to persons who worship him for material gain. Such materialistic devotees may be blessed by the Lord with material benefits, but they cannot reach the stage of the first-class human being as above mentioned. There are many examples of such sincere devotees in the history of the world, especially in India and they are our guides on the path of self-realization. Mahatma Madura is one such great devotee of the Lord, and we should try to follow in his lotus footsteps for self-realization. Srila Prabhupada, Patita Pavana Ki Jai, Gaura Premanandi. So there we have a lot of very important points here. So, as we read yesterday, it says, self-realization is obstructed by such undue affection for family, and if anyone is at all able to forget such a relation, he is called undisturbed or dhira. This is, however, the path of renunciation based on a frustrated life. But stabilization of such renunciation is possible only by association with bona fide saints and self-realized souls, by which one can be engaged in a loving devotional service of the Lord. So now today, Prabhupada is saying there are three classes of transcendentalists. One is the dhira, or one who is not disturbed by being away from family association. And two, one in the renounced order of life, a sannyasi, by frustrated sentiment. And three, a sincere devotee of the Lord who awakens God consciousness by hearing and chanting, and leaves home depending completely on the personality of God who resides in his heart. So, we should not be in a rush to leave home and renounce everything. Because if we do it artificially, and there are many examples of that, we will eventually fall down. But what's important here is the sincere devotee of the Lord who awakens God consciousness by hearing and chanting. So this hearing and chanting, this is the essential thing. Susu Saho Shraddhanasya Bhakti Yoga. Let's see, what's that verse? 1, 2. 1 second, let me find that verse. Sususaho Shraddhanasya Vasudeva Kataruchi Syan Mahat Sevaya Vipra Punyatirtani Sevanat. O twice born sages, by serving those devotees who are completely freed from all vice, great service is done. By such service, one gains affinity for hearing the messages of Vasudeva. So this is the issue here. This is the main thing. That is, serving devotees who are completely free from all vice. That is Srila Prabhupada and his sincere servants. And it says, by such service one gains affinity for hearing the messages of Vasudeva. That's the point. In that association, one actually gains the attachment for regularly hearing the messages of Krishna. And in the purport, Prabhupada says, the conditioned life of a living being is caused by his revolting against the Lord. There are men called deva, or godly living beings, and there are men called asuras, or demons, who are against the authority of the Supreme Lord. In Bhagavad Gita 16th chapter, a vivid description of the asuras is given, in which it is said that the asuras are put into lower and lower states of ignorance, life after life, and so sink to the lower animal forms and have no information of the absolute truth, the personality of Godhead. These asuras are gradually rectified to God consciousness by the mercy of the Lord's liberated servitors in different countries according to the supreme will. Such devotees of God are very confidential associates of the Lord, and when they come to save human society from the dangers of godlessness, they are known as the powerful incarnations of the Lord, as sons of the Lord, as servants of the Lord, or as associates of the Lord, but none of them falsely claim to be God themselves. This is a blasphemy declared by the asuras. And the demoniac followers of such asuras also accept pretenders as God or his incarnation. In the revealed scriptures, there is definite information of the incarnation of God. No one should be accepted as God or as an incarnation of God unless he is confirmed by the revealed scriptures. The servants of God are to be respected as God by the devotees who actually want to go back to Godhead. Such servants of God are called Mahatmas or Tirthas, and they preach according to particular time and place. The servants of God urge people to become devotees of the Lord. They never tolerate being called God. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was God himself according to the indication of revealed scriptures, but he played the part of a devotee. People who knew him to be God addressed him as God, but he used to block his ears with his hands and chant the name of Lord Vishnu. He strongly protested against being called God, although undoubtedly he was God himself. The Lord behaves so to warn us against unscrupulous men who take pleasure in being addressed as God. The servants of God come to propagate God consciousness, and intelligent people should cooperate with them in every respect. By serving the servant of God, one can please God more than by directly serving the Lord. The Lord is more pleased when he sees that his servants are properly respected, because such servants risk everything for the service of the Lord, and so are very dear to the Lord. The Lord declares in the Bhagavad Gita 18:69 that no one is dearer to him than one who risks everything to preach his glory. By serving the servants of the Lord, one gradually gets the quality of such servants, and thus one becomes qualified to hear the glories of God. The eagerness to hear about God is the first qualification of a devotee eligible for entering the kingdom of God. So, who is eager to hear about God? That's the first qualification, or let's say the most important qualification of a devotee who is eligible for entering the kingdom of God. So we see how this reverent hearing is emphasized over and over again by Srila Prabhupada and the Vaishnava Acharyas. So one should therefore practice devotional service at home, hearing and chanting the holy name, quality, form, pastimes, entourage, etc., in association with pure devotees. And this practice will help one awaken God consciousness in proportion to one's sincerity of purpose. So there's the example of Gajendra. Gajendra was an elephant. And one day, with his many wives, he went and took a bath in a lake, and he was enjoying water sports with his many wives and children. And then an alligator, or a crocodile, maybe it was a crocodile, bit his leg and wouldn't let go. And now they were in a tug of war for about 1,000 years. But because the alligator was in its element, water, and the elephant was not in its element, which is land, eventually Gajendra became exhausted, and the alligator became stronger and stronger. So being in your element, what does that mean exactly? Well, some people take sannyas at an early age and maintain their vows throughout their life. And other people desire rather to get married. There's no shame or fault in that. One can be Krishna conscious from any position, but one should follow the rules and regulations regardless of what position they have, whether they're a neophyte or an experienced sannyasi or a householder. So here Prabhupada says that one can stay at home and continue hearing and chanting in the association of pure devotees. So does the pure devotee live in your house? No. But that's why it's very good to live near a temple. And then one gets the association of Prabhupada himself through his books, and with Prabhupada's servants and servants of servants and so forth. And this way, one makes progress in their elements. Some people need to have that relationship of home and hearth and children and so forth. Okay, fine. As long as one follows the regulative principles, they make spiritual advancement. And as long as they have the taste for hearing and chanting, they're not affected by any situation. And eventually, Prabhupada says, one should therefore practice devotional service at home, hearing and chanting the holy name, quality, form, pastimes, entourage, etc., in association with pure devotees, and this practice will help one awaken God consciousness in proportion to one's sincerity of purpose. So in proportion to one's sincerity of purpose. Does one really want to go back to Godhead? Does one really want to always be hearing and chanting about Krishna? Or does one want a lot of material, as much material opulence as they can get in order to also enjoy better comforts in life? So this is a choice we have to make. So the correct choice is to voluntarily limit sense gratification to what is permitted, and increase progressively one's hearing and chanting and serving and positive association with devotees. So that can be done. It's not impossible to do that. Prabhupada himself did that. He was a grihasta for so many years, and he associated with devotees. He donated to temples. He started temples, and he was always faithfully following his spiritual master's instructions. So even though he wasn't a great sannyasi in the Gaudiya Math, he was respected by the sannyasis and others because he was a sincere, dedicated grihasta. And when the time came, he became a sannyasi. And then he did something that the other sannyasis in the movement didn't do or weren't capable of doing. He spread the movement all over the world. So Prabhupada's example should be the guide for all devotees, whether it's sannyasis or grihastas or vanaprasthas. He engaged in a life of preparation in order to spread this movement all over the world. And look what he's done. He translated the two most important Vedic literatures, Srimad Bhagavatam and Srimad Bhagavad Gita, and also Nectar Devotion, and also Chaitanya Charitamrita. So these are the most important scriptures for devotees to make spiritual advancement. And he's opened up so many temples, established a governing body commission to manage the movement after his disappearance, and basically gave everything for someone to either be a sannyasi and an itinerant traveler, or a grihasta that's anchored in one place, and both of them can make the same spiritual advancement and go back to Godhead. It's an amazing thing that Prabhupada has done. You don't have to leave your country, you don't have to leave your family, but you prepare yourself for the time where you should give those things up and completely depend on the mercy of Krishna. So, Prabhupada says, real perfection of the path to liberation is attained when one has practiced to depend fully on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who lives in everyone's heart as Paramatma. That this is the main point. And do we actually believe that Krishna is in our heart and he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the protector of his devotees, the kind friend of his devotees, and that Krishna is guaranteeing protection? Shipam bhavati dharmatma satsvachantim negachati konteya pratijanihi name bhakta pranasyati. So he promises that his devotee will never perish. Do we actually believe this? Are we willing to take risks in order to spread this movement on the basis that Krishna will always protect his sincere devotee? So that's what Prabhupada did. He took a huge risk. At 70 years old, he comes to America with no money and no disciples. And he starts preaching and chanting Hare Krishna. And all of a sudden there's the Hare Krishna explosion in America, you see, because he took a risk. It was a big risk at his age and his state of health. He had 2 heart attacks on the way to the United States, but it didn't stop him. So that's why it says, but real perfection of the path of liberation is attained when one is practiced to depend fully on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who lives in everyone's heart as Paramatma. One may live in the darkest jungle alone out of home, but a steadfast devotee knows very well that he is not alone. Yeah, Krishna is with him all the time. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is with him, and he can protect his sincere devotee in any awkward circumstance. One should therefore practice devotional service at home, hearing and chanting the holy name, quality, form, pastimes, entourage, etc., in association with pure devotees. And this practice will help one awaken God consciousness in proportion to one's sincerity of purpose. See? So, every word is carefully chosen here by Srila Prabhupada. And what is this? In proportion to one's sincerity of purpose. So, is our purpose to make money, or is our purpose to please Guru and Krishna? We have to make that decision. And there's always anxiety in the material world. Someone will say, oh my God, I'm only an H-1B worker in America, and Trump is going to eliminate all of us. We have to go back to India. I have a house. I invested all this money. What's going to happen to me? Well, there's so many different questions. Other Americans are saying, what's happening? This country's falling apart. Black Lives Matter, and no justice, no peace, and there's rioting, and there's looting, and there's killing, and is the United States going to fall apart like the Soviet Union? So whether you're going to be forced to go back to India, or whether you live in the United States and the country is going to fall apart, these are questions that are in people's minds. It disturbs their minds. They're in anxiety. That's the nature of the material world. There's always anxiety here. But, as Prabhupada says, that real perfection of the path of liberation is attained when one is practiced to depend fully on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who lives in everyone's heart as Paramatma. This is what we should focus on, to depend fully on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who lives in everyone's heart. So this complete dependence on the goodwill of Krishna, that is what you accustom yourself to by regular hearing and chanting, because you become convinced that Krishna actually exists. He is the Supreme Controller, and He's going to protect me in all circumstances if I follow the regulative principles sincerely. Therefore, that's what I should focus on. Hearing and chanting and following the regulative principles, and being engaged in devotional service as much as possible outside of my work and family obligations. And not worry about the future. The future means we're all going to die, so we should prepare for that moment of death by being practiced in remembering Krishna favorably and always meditating on the pastimes of the Lord and the mercy of the Lord. This is what sustains devotees. That's why humanity has continued throughout time, even in the worst conditions. So, therefore, we have nothing to worry about. Chant Hare Krishna and be happy. Don't chant Hare Krishna and be miserable. Take the choice. You want to be miserable? Don't chant. Don't follow regulative principles. You want to be happy? chant and follow the regulative principles, work honestly, depend on Krishna, associate regularly with devotees who relish hearing and chanting about Krishna. Then everything's going to work out in some miraculous way. You will be protected by Krishna in all situations. All glories to Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Are there any questions? What? No, what he's saying is this regular hearing and chanting gets you accustomed to depending on the mercy of Krishna. If you just say, oh, we have to depend on the mercy of Krishna, without the hearing and chanting, it's not going to work. It's the hearing and chanting the glories of the Lord on a regular basis every day that's going to make you very secure in depending on the mercy of Krishna. That's the point. The real perfection of path of deliberation is attained when one has practiced to depend fully on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So how do you get practiced to depend fully on the Personality of Godhead? It's regular hearing and chanting and positive association with sincere devotees and doing service. This is practice. The key is the hearing and chanting. We should be always hearing and chanting about Krishna. So, every time we have that desire to, look on the cell phone, go to the internet, turn on the television, that's when we have to think, wait a minute, is this hearing and chanting about Krishna, or is this hearing and chanting about nonsense? So every day we're faced with this decision, what we're going to hear and what we're going to think about. So if we're attached to hearing the news, right, then that's where our mind goes, and it goes off of hearing and chanting about the glories of the Lord. So you can map out your day, it's just like you get these figures, the statistics every week or every month. You spent 5 hours on the internet today, right? Or you spent, 10 hours on the internet. So what did you spend that time looking at or hearing, right? So you can tell, if it's all that time is spent hearing and chanting, then the internet is not bad, and it helped you, keep your mind focused on Krishna. But if you went off into the news and this thing and that thing, then you're not using your time properly, and therefore your dependence on Krishna gets weaker. See? And you develop anxiety and doubt and fear. So, therefore, a sincere devotee of the Lord who awakens God consciousness by hearing and chanting and leaves home depending completely on the personality of Godhead who resides in his heart. So, are we going to be that sincere devotee? Well, he doesn't say leave immediately right now that you heard this, No. He said you can stay at home. It says that one should therefore practice devotional service at home, hearing and chanting the holy name, quality, form, pastimes, entourage, etc., in association with pure devotees, and this practice will help one awaken God consciousness in proportion to one's sincerity of purpose. So that sincerity of purpose will increase by positive association, and it'll decrease by negative association. So there's the two ways of associating. One is in person, or one is through social media, which is not exactly in person anymore. But you're connecting with people, but it's through the social media medium. So again, you have to map out who you're associating with, what you're hearing during the day. And if it's predominantly nonsense, then your sincerity of purpose will be weakened or nullified over time. Haribol. Haribol. Glory to Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.